Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, my guest is Shannon Wischmeyer from Dealer Pay. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Brian. It's good to be back.
Yeah, really happy to have you back, and we're going to talk about a lot of exciting things today.
Yes, we are.
Let's start with a hands-on credit card processing partner. Does a dealership need one?
Absolutely. I don't think it's just in credit card processing. I think it's in software all across the dealership. Payment processing is just a part of it.
Yeah.
And honestly, payment processing has come quite a long way over the past few years, specifically since COVID. Dealers are looking for different options for their, payment solutions as well as for their consumers to pay. And for some, it's still kind of an afterthought in a typically antiquated, industry. But in the dealership world, payments are very crucial. And whether it's in service, parts, finance, dealers need a solution that's fast and secure and adaptable, honestly. For years, standalone terminals have been the go-to. And while they still do work, they take payments, they process your batches, and the money ends up in your account a few days later. Today, that's not always enough. Dealerships need modern and secure payment technology behind their payment processing.
Tell me about that. When you say more than a standalone processor, like what other things do dealers need today?
So they really want options. They want different ways to be able to pay. Consumers are busy and they don't always want to or are able to make it into the dealership to make their payments. Maybe the dealership's closed. They want to be able to pay beforehand, talk to their advisor, send payment links, different ways to pay before they come into the dealership. That way, all of their questions are answered. They have everything, signed off on, payments are made. They can basically come in, pick up their keys, and they can walk out of the dealership. So it makes it much easier. Not only saves time for the consumer, but also for the dealership staff as well. So really, that's kind of where Dealer Pay stands out the most as far as we're not just another payment processor. We like to consider ourselves a full financial platform as well as a full financial partner. We hold your hand through the entire process, from the sales process to the enrollment and implementation process. Our implementation starts before we even walk through the door. We will set up calls to go over, network configurations with an IT department. Some dealerships have very large IT departments that are very concerned with, what's going into their dealership. So we work with them, explain exactly what to expect. We pre-educate the managers so that they can prepare their staff for when we come in. In the beginning, there were a lot of times where we'd walk in and employees didn't know who we were. Well, I didn't know we were getting a new payment processor. So it's one of the things that, we always try to assist them with and make sure that they're comfortable with any type of changes that are going to make. Then we do show up on site. We don't just drop your terminals and say, see ya. We stay, we help implement all of our integrations from our DMS integrations. If you have ACH processing, and just make sure that the connectivity and everything is working properly. And additionally, we do train the entire staff, not just on how Dealer Pay works, but also as well as surcharging and cash discounting and how to communicate that with customers and overcome their objections and just make it a really comfortable conversation for the employee to have with the consumer. So there's no unexpected charges. They understand exactly what to expect. We also supply them with signage and, beforehand, before we even show up, it's always a good practice, to allow them to notify their customers that this is going to come about. We've had, different situations where, the dealerships will begin charging that day and there's no notification, and maybe they've given an estimate and then the customer shows up and all of a sudden, oh, there's an extra 3% charge here no one told me about. So it's just all about education and just making sure that the transition to their new payment processor is comfortable.
I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah, if you dropped off your car 2 days before,
Absolutely.
then you could be, completely caught off guard. But if you, I'm guessing you're saying you would put up like notification signage in advance of day one. That way,
Absolutely.
everybody that's dropping off cars is going to know that starting on that day.
We suggest a minimum of 2 weeks, but we really would like them to do it about 30 days in advance if that time frame is available. And then they're able to answer those questions and know that this is coming. And when they do give that estimate, they'll say, on this date, there will be a 3% surcharge if you're using a credit card. But if you would like to avoid that charge, you can pay with a debit card, cash, or check.
I mean, that's I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, I
Yes.
mean, that would be a surprise, but that's a really easy way to prevent that uncomfortable situation.
Absolutely. And we're all about maintaining the CSI scores within the dealership. It's very important to them. And really, the payment acceptance is the last point of contact that the merchant, or I'm sorry, that the consumer has at the merchant. And that leaves a lasting impression. And if it's not a good one, that's what they're going to remember about that dealership.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of dealerships are considering surcharging right now, and
Yes.
it seems like, I mean, just from a consumer standpoint, I know that I've gone into different businesses and they're handling it in different ways.
Yes.
And so can you talk a little bit about like what's the right way to do it, and if a dealer doesn't do it the right way, like who's on the hook for that, and what's the potential damage that could do to their business?
So you're absolutely right. Surcharging and the laws surrounding surcharging are changing rapidly. I mean, what is compliant in one state one day may not be the next, just based on legislation. And honestly, what is legal in Ohio may not be legal in New York or Florida. So it is a very difficult landscape to navigate for some dealers, especially in a world where compliance in all aspects of their business are very strict. So Dealer Pay, we always try to educate the dealers on what is compliant, what is not compliant, because ultimately it is the dealership that is, responsible for that. The processor can help them and jump in and to help mitigate that, but ultimately it falls on the dealership.
You're talking about people in different states and being legal in one state and another. I mean, a lot of dealerships are selling cars to people in lots of states.
Absolutely.
Is the law based upon where the dealership is, or
Yes.
okay? So even if you're selling a car 5 states away, you follow the laws of the state that you're in,
Yes.
but you don't have to worry about the laws
Of where you reside.
Okay.
So if you are from Missouri and you're purchasing a vehicle in Massachusetts, for example, Massachusetts is one of the states where you cannot surcharge. It is illegal. But Missouri, you can. So it just depends on what state you go to, and what we do to help navigate that is we have a payment-specific legal team that we consult with on every state's legislation, what may be in the works with them, and we just keep them updated as to where it's at. And along those lines, we also have a compliant cash discounting program, and cash discounting is actually legal in all 50 states. And the differences are, for cash discounting, you can actually surcharge debit cards, and really it revolves around the wording of how you present that to the customer. Cash discounting it basically allows you to pass that cost on, but you do have to show different pricing, which is very difficult for a lot of payment processors, as they don't have the ability to change the repair order or duplicate that and show the two different prices, the credit price or the cash price. Cash price can also be a check or ACH as well. And so we currently have a DMS integration with all of the major DMS companies, and we can pull these repair orders over, send a copy of these with our payment request, or they can just print them out of our system, and it will show the two different prices to help them remain compliant.
I got you. So you can do a cash discount program as long as you show the customer both the regular price and the cash discount price.
Absolutely. And the laws on signage and making sure, have the word tracks to work with the consumers. They're basically the same. You have to have signage at the point of entry and that also at the point of sale for each surcharging and for cash discounting.
If a dealer's considering doing surcharging, do you have any additional advice for them?
I will say that being a controller for 20 years, I can't tell you the countless budget and forecasting meetings I sat through, and credit card expenses were always, a main point of contention. It was always, how can we lower these? How can we get rid of them? And so it resulted in a lot of dealerships actually capping the amount of a credit card that they would take, whether it be a down payment on a car. The specific dealership I worked at was $2,000. And that might not be as big of an issue in the finance department for somebody purchasing a vehicle, but you may have a situation in the service department where someone has a necessary repair that they can't necessarily pay for. So it is definitely something that they can get rid of that rule at that point, and they pass that fee onto the consumer, and that it makes it an easier process for the merchant as well as the consumer, and it gives them a lot more choices.
Well, I mean, there really aren't too many repairs that are going to fit under that $2,000
Absolutely
limit right now.
Anymore, yes. I mean, a long time ago it was, you need a transmission job or an engine, but now that could be routine maintenance.
Yeah, my air conditioner went out on my Toyota 4Runner, and the part cost $1,700. So with labor, I would be out of luck. I'd have to go to the ATM and get some cash.
Absolutely. But, in a lot of situations, some people don't have that option.
Yeah.
There's no other way to pay, and they could be left without a car, or, they're scrambling. So, it's a great way to reduce those expenses. But at the same time, we do help all of our dealers, navigate their way through all of the compliance, all of the legislation that comes through with our payment-specific legal team, and it's really helped us quite a bit. Another thing that I'd like to bring up about some of the compliance and surcharging is a lot of people don't know that some of that income can be taxable, depending on the state. And that's not always relayed to the customer at the time that they're switching. And so as the CFO and the COO of Dealer Pay, I have fielded a lot of those questions. And so I have been working on a program with a CPA firm on helping me with what those specific laws are in each state. And eventually we will have a landing page on our website that you can go directly to what those laws are. And then it will take you to the state's website so you can get more information as well.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's at least in my time on Earth, you don't see a lot of taxes go away.
They never go away. They always just get larger and larger.
Yeah, and like one state has a bad idea and has a new tax, and all the other states tend to follow. So I would imagine that if your state's not taxing that now, it's probably coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the way that laws are written, they're not always easily understandable. So, and I think that's sometimes by design, but we really help our dealers navigate through that because it can be very confusing.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcox Media.
Chargebacks and fraud are a problem for every business, and dealerships have the same problem. I mean, like, what can dealers do right now? I mean, as bad actors are coming at them from every direction, trying to either commit fraud or chargebacks, which sometimes are fraud. What can they do to protect themselves?
I would say the number one thing is they can educate themselves and their staff on the red flags of risk to mitigate that. I myself hold ongoing chargeback webinars just to educate on the different types of situations and things to look for as far as fraud and chargebacks could go. When you think of fraud, you think of the scammers. They steal your credit card information. They steal your personal information for financial gain. However, what a lot of people don't think of and is really on the rise is friendly fraud. If you're not familiar with friendly fraud, basically that is when a consumer unknowingly or knowingly charges back a transaction from the dealership. And an example of maybe unknowingly would be, let's say a customer goes in to get an oil change and they're going into ABC Chevrolet. And then they leave, they move on with their life. And a few days later, they're looking at their bank statement and maybe, the descriptor code on the bank statement says Shannon Wischmeyer, Inc. And that has nothing to do, it's the legal name of the dealership, and it has nothing to do with the dealership and, what is this? So they, without researching or anything, they just charge it back. People are short on time and they don't want to deal with that. So it could be something as simple as that. But I read a very alarming article on MSNBC just a few days ago that 75% of all chargebacks, not just in the dealership space, but across the United States and all industries, 75% of chargebacks are friendly fraud.
Oh, wow.
And another example of a knowing friendly fraud situation would be, one always stands out in my mind from one that we've had in the past. A customer was in the dealership having some repair work done on their vehicle. There was nothing wrong with what the dealership did, how they fixed their vehicle, everything was perfect. They didn't like the way that the service advisor spoke to them. So rather than call the dealership and have a conversation and just try to work that out, they just charged it back. So what I suggest is you always make sure that you relay all of your refund, your return policies to customers. There are a lot of times merchants will take phone payments for down payments, and more so in the parts department. And which I do have to, by the way, we highly discourage the hand key payments because there is a lot more risk involved in those. You can use send payment requests where the consumer has to verify who they are. And, you relay your return policy. One of the biggest things is do not ship parts to an address that's not the billing address on the card. That is a number one red flag. It's not always fraud, but it is a huge red flag in that case. So basically, dealers just need to be diligent and understand what those risks are, educate their employees, make sure that they understand what those look like, and just follow the same processes every time. Make sure that you have all of your documentation signed, not just estimated repair orders, but final repair orders, parts tickets, even if it is, they're not in the dealership and then maybe it's a send payment link. With our system, when we send a payment link, it also includes a copy of the repair order as well as the parts ticket or buyer's order. So when that customer is signing off on the credit card receipt, they're also signing off with terms and conditions that they're signing off on that repair order as well. And then we house that within our point of sale software. And so that helps that if it does become a chargeback, then they do already have all of that paperwork in one place. And I will say that Dealer Pay takes this issue very seriously because the cost of a chargeback is not just the cost of losing that part and the time savings, the time within the dealership that the staff has to pull all this paperwork and whatever information they need to gather to fight that. We have tried to make it a little bit easier. We have enlisted and implemented within our software a risk management program called Count. And basically, this is an Equifax company that runs in the background. We provide it to all of our dealerships free of charge. And it is a risk assessment that runs in the background for card not present transactions. And while the transaction is processing, basically at the same time, there are millions of data points in just those few seconds that they are checking on, and they're returning a risk score on each transaction from 0 to 100. If it's 10 or under, they automatically decline it. They're basically saying this is fraud. Anything over that, they want human eyes laid upon that transaction. So it may be held and they receive some type of notification, this needs to be viewed. Because you could have something as simple as, Amy Smith just came in to pay for her vehicle, but she used Tom, her husband's credit card. And it's going to throw up a red flag, hey, this isn't the same customer because we're pulling that information from the DMS and it's not matching. And so, the merchant can look at it and say, oh, this one's okay. Let's go ahead and approve this. Or Amy's in the dealership all the time. We know who she is.
Yeah.
We can track her down. But if it's somebody that says, we're buying this part and we're in Vermont, here's our addresses, that can return a risk score letting you know, hey, that IP address is actually in Vietnam. This may not be the person that you think it is. So this is extremely important to us. And not only do we provide this free of charge, we also help the merchants navigate through the chargeback process. There's specific items that each dealership needs for each type of chargeback.
Mm-hmm.
And we help them with, this is what documentation you will need. If you have any type of rebuttal, write up what happened. It sounds kind of silly with every little detail, but it is extremely helpful for the bank to understand what happened during that transaction. In a lot of things, a lot of the problem that we face is the dealership, and not just dealerships, but merchants across the country in any industry don't understand is that the processor doesn't make that final decision on who wins the chargeback. Mm-hmm. That actually comes from the issuing bank of the consumer's card. And so unfortunately for the merchant, it's already kind of leaning towards the consumer. So the dealership really has to do their due diligence and just make sure that they're getting all of that information, getting signatures on everything. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary all the time to have it on the credit card receipt, but all of your supporting documentation. Even if you have video of the customer signing it, in the dealership, save it. If you have them on the phone and they're agreeing to it, and you have phone recordings, save it. It is always going to be helpful in helping you win.
There's kind of one consistent theme I've been noticing about the things we've been talking about. And it seems like, the laws are changing, the rules are changing, like everything's changing.
Yes.
How can dealers stay on top of that? I mean, they're trying to sell cars and service cars and sell parts and fix cars. Like, how do they keep up with all that and just make sure they're compliant?
It's very difficult. It's, because it's, like you said, there's so many different aspects of compliance, and payment processing is just one. Mm-hmm. And so it goes back to the hands-on, dealership, or the hands-on vendor experience is just, you have to have someone that is there to support your dealership and to always be there to answer your questions. Mm-hmm. For example, and I'm obviously not going to name names, but I do know that there is a DMS company out there that is getting into surcharging. And they are telling their dealers that it's okay to surcharge 4%. And while they can use that additional money to maybe pay for their debit transactions, that's a direct violation of Visa's 3% cap.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you don't want to get in trouble with Visa.
Yes. And the thing is, merchants and dealers rely on these companies to do their diligence and to be able to explain what is compliant and what isn't. And I've run across this many times where I'm speaking to dealers and they say, well, so-and-so said it's okay. Well, why would they lie? Why are you telling me different? And so a lot of times you have to show them the legislation or the compliance laws or exactly what it is for them to understand.
You've mentioned a few things that a couple of the things you've developed more recently. It seems like you're always coming up with new products and services for dealers. What are you working on right now? What's coming next?
Well, I'll tell you, this is something that keeps us up at night sometimes. How to stay ahead, 2 steps ahead of the competition. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of payment processors out there, and we've been doing this I've been with Dealer Pay for 5 years, and they have been in existence for about 13. And really, it is driven by what's happening in the industry. Mm-hmm. And we also enlist the feedback from our dealers. We actually have a dealer advisory board mm-hmm. that meet with us 4 times a year, every quarter. And we get their feedback based on, hey, what's working for you that we currently have? What would you like to see? in the future, these are some of the ideas that we have. Is this something you would find beneficial? So one of the things that we are currently working on is converting cryptocurrency so that consumers have even more payment options. We are also working on automating payables and receivables to help out the cash flow within the accounting office. Not necessarily, but I always felt like the accounting office was maybe overlooked a little bit when it came to specific softwares and trying to help them out. And rather than have a big stack of checks on somebody's desk that they have to look through and sign every one, obviously eyes need to be laid on these transactions, but it's really just the click of a button and their payables are sent along with the statements and the invoices they're paying, and the same thing as well as receivables. You can send their statements along with a payment link. They can make that payment and it all automatically flows into our reporting. One other thing we're doing is we are in the process of coming up with a way to create a virtual service advisor that is a kiosk that stands outside of the dealership for, as I mentioned, sometimes people can't always be there during dealership hours. And what it is it's a secure way to either drop off their car, drop off their keys. That is a key machine. It is secure, and then when they come back, if they don't want to speak to someone, we know, some people don't want to have to interact with the dealership staff.
Yeah.
So it makes it very easy. They come up, they scan a QR code. They get a multi-factor authentication, just making sure that that's who they are. They can make payment from there, and the keys can drop, and they're on their way.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So
I mean that'd be great for people that travel like you and me if you need to pick up your car on Sunday, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Or at 10:30 at night.
Yes. And there's always an option. Maybe if it's during service hours, they can say, "Do you have questions? Do you want to speak to someone? Let me get someone for you." They can, or step inside the dealership or whatever the case may be. Or if they're closed, hey, let me have Joe call you tomorrow morning and he can discuss this with you, what exactly we did, to your vehicle if you have those questions. Yes, absolutely.
Shannon, I really appreciate you coming in today. Is there anything more you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I will say that payments are always evolving, and Dealer Pay is always trying to be better because that's what it takes for us and our dealers to win and succeed. And at this point, payment processing is no longer a commodity. It is something that requires modern, secure technology. You are using all of these technologies and all other aspects of your business. You're using a DMS to track your customers and, your parts, inventory, everything that entails. You're using service lane technologies to take, to look at all that information, analytics, to help you make informed decisions about your dealership. So why would you not do that with your payment processing? That's your cash flow. That is a great way to understand how you can maybe speed up your payments, what you can be doing differently. I would say my advice to dealers would be to absolutely vet any of the any of the vendors that you may be looking at, whether that's payment processing or anything. But you want to make sure that they are there to help you. You don't want somebody that, like I said, is going to drop off your terminals and then you see them on the side of a milk carton, 5 days later because they're MIA. And we're becoming more and more dependent on technology every day. So to me, it's just the natural process of just upgrading your dealership and making it the best that it can be and as profitable as possible and keeping your customers happy.
Great. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Yes. Now I can't wait to have you back again in the future.
I'll be here.
Thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today our guest has been Shannon Wischmeyer from Dealer Pay. We hope to see you again on a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas.